Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar on steel structures design and analysis. I'm Asher and I'll be taking you through our solution today. Now before we get started, I'm going to just wait a few minutes just for our last few attendees to arrive. If you guys could just confirm the audio quality on your end by either just inserting through the chat, just let me know that you guys can hear me clearly. Thank you. Okay, so we can make a start now. Thank you to those people who confirmed the audio quality. To all the others, I hope you guys can hear me well. If you guys do have some problems, just insert it as a question and we'll see what we can do about it. Okay, let's get started. Now, how I usually like to give these webinars is I like to initially explain a bit about the workflow and how we tend to maneuver around our solutions. And actually, now of course, if this isn't your first webinar, this might sound a bit repetitive because I do go through this this diagram here, but it really is the best way to explain the workflow. Now, I hope you guys can all see the screen as well. You can see here, this is the diagram I'm talking about. Initially, how we usually like to start is with a physical 3D model, and that's the architectural model that we use. Now, here at CYPE, we have a architectural modeler called IFC Builder. Of course, IFC Builder because we build in IFC format. That's our native format throughout our workflow. But we also have capabilities to bring in architectural models from a wide variety of other solutions, such as your ArchiCADs, your Revits, your Allplans. We have our Revit plugin, for instance, and our IFC uploader, where we can bring in your architectural modeler to accommodate it into our workflow. Now, what does that actually mean? So once we have that physical 3D model, we synchronize it into the BIM Service Center, and this is where your project can be accessed to all your stakeholders and other professionals, and also to private individuals that you may need to do specific things on your particular project. And these specific things center around specialized applications. So these are the different facets of a building that we can maneuver around and create models against. So for instance, this webinar will be dealing with this particular logo here. So our structural solutions. Here we had the steel structures analysis and design with CYPE 3D, and also we'll be looking at our portal frame generator as well, and looking at the interoperability between the two. And of course, if you were here last week, if you attended last week's webinar on the design and analysis of concrete structures, you'll know that we also have solutions for that as well. all of them are woven through this workflow, as you can see. So it centers around the BIM Service Center, where we can actually have a look. I'm going to show an example project and show how a real world project can actually look like. But before that, what I wanted to mention was these technical documents as well. So all our specialized applications can generate these technical documents. Things such as specifications, so all our cost estimates, drawings, schematic diagrams, they can all be generated within the specialized applications, but also shared on the BIM Service Center. And what I'm going to do now is attempt to demonstrate this workflow with a real life example. So I'm going to head to BIM Service Center. Here you can see I've logged in. Now, all you need to do to create an account is just have an email address. You'll give the store your email address. You'll get a confirmation email, and you're instantly able to go into the BIM Service Center and maneuver around the spaces. Now you can see this is the dashboard we have. These are the different projects that I'm a part of over here. My contacts, as well as their professional activity. Some pending collaboration requests. So requests that I've received to be a part of one of my colleagues' projects, and also the ones I've sent. So I can view the ones that I've sent and view the status of them. I can also look at some downloaded applications that I've downloaded in the past, and some modules and licenses, and also a social media feed here. What I wanted to show is the projects. So let's have a look at the projects I'm a part of. We're going to have a look at some. What I want to show is one in particular. So this project here, this is actually modeled off a real world project in regards to a European Union initiative looking at energy reduction and greenhouses throughout the world. So what we've done is modeled that building here, and we're obviously working to create different models on this particular architectural model. So you can see this is the project's dashboard. You can see that I have been assigned as the editor. So I've been assigned certain privileges that I'm able to do as well. So the project creator or leader is responsible for the allocation of roles within that project. You can see here the applications that are recommended for me. So up next, what does the system think I need to do next? My work team, I can view a bit about the files. We're going to touch on that in a second, and some latest changes that have been made as well. Okay, so let's go into this larger 3D view. You can see here, you might have already seen that the structural model is here. So you can see this is the structural model that's been designed in CYPE 3D. As such, you can see all our structural elements. So our beams, our columns, our foundation, they're all here. Now, that's partly because the only model I have is that's been toggled on is my structural model. So I can turn this off. You can see everything's gone, and I can turn on my architectural model. And if we go back to the diagram, you can see this is the physical 3D model, and I've just turned off my structural model. Now, of course, I can make this transparent, and you can see the amount of the different models that are associated with this project. All these different models have been developed in their own specialized application. So you can see furniture model, and as I keep on laying them on, you can see obviously the capabilities here. Let's leave this. We can turn on the structural as well. Our lighting, plumbing, water systems, loads. The list goes on and on and on in terms of the capabilities of our solutions. Now, what does this mean? It means that anyone, professional or not, can come into the BIM Service Center and view view the model as such, and get information about the model. You know, we can look at different measurements, some very basic tools for the layman user. And that's a bit about how the BIM Service Center platform works. Now, what I wanted to show as well, which is a really great part of this, is the files command. So you can see here, as I mentioned, if we go back to the diagram, all these different technical documents that can be obtained from the BIM Service Center. So I can go into files here. and you can see that the files will be arranged by particular model, and I'm able to go into particular models and view the different files that have been made available by the creator. So in this case, Vincent, and he's used OpenBIM Office Furniture to create this model. And you can see here all the different models that I can download within the structure. So you can see here, I even have, we can also create PDF models, basically any sort of format we can make available here. By the way, guys, if you guys had any questions, if they're quite complex questions, I'm going to leave them to the end. But if I see the question and I can answer it straight away, I will answer it straight away as well. So that's a bit about the capabilities of this particular workflow here. So what does this mean? It means that different information is stored in one place. So, you know, before this sort of workflow, you have to look at different different ways of modeling, etc., and also different ways of organizing this information. Here, everything is in one place. I know Ahmed has asked a question, how to join BIM server. Okay, so I'm going to log out here, go to bimserver.center. That's all you need to do. Go up here to log in, register an account. So put your email. You'll get a confirmation email, Ahmed, and once you confirm your account, then just log in, and you can do so as such. And I'll just log back in here. So yeah, that's a bit about the BIM Service Center. You can also view some recommended projects, and we're actually looking further ahead with this sort of workflow and how we can sort of create this centralized working platform where different professionals from around the world can take part in different construction projects as well, no matter where they come from, whether they come from a mechanical engineering side, a structural side, you know, acoustic side. We also have acoustics solutions as well. So it's quite rigorous in terms of where we want to go in the future. You can see here all the different contacts and their specializations. So I can obviously reach out to my contacts and say, blah, 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 I need some help with this particular section of my project, link them that particular project, make it available to them, give them the permissions to amend, and then move on as such. And that's a bit about it. Now, what I want to do before I move on is encourage you guys to go into the BIM Service Center store, where you can view all our different solutions here. So again, I mentioned the Revit plugin and the IFC uploader. That's there in terms of the capabilities. But here we have multiple different categories of projects of programs that you can choose, from acoustics all the way to structural analysis, etc., etc. We also have within our repertoire some manufacturer systems rather. So here you can see, I'm sure you can recognize a few of these brands that we've brought along into our workflow. And what this basically does is gives the user the freedom to choose and also design their installations, from HVAC to facade installations, etc., modeled on different applications, and then you can obviously make the right choice and make a more diligent choice there. So you can see here as well all the different manufacturer settings. So I would definitely recommend you guys to explore this sort of explore this center, the BIM Service Center, and have a look at all the different capabilities our software is able to do. So let's get started. Initially, I'm going to start off with CYPE 3D. So let's open that up now. I have my suite. Open up CYPE 3D. I hope, Ahmed, that answered your question in terms of how to join BIM Service Center. Okay, so here is the initial page. So you can see if you've used any of our other solutions, it's basically the same thing. We can start a new project. We can open projects from the past. and we can look at some examples, and we're going to be going through some examples here. And also we have a section for our recent files and some help documentation, so user manuals, calculations, examples, responsibility clauses, etc. What I'm going to do today is create a new project from complete scratch. So I'm going to start a new project. Accept. Now you can see here the program asks me to create either to create an empty job or an automatic introduction IFC. Now, if you already have an IFC file, you can of course introduce that here, and the program will cater and create a job based on your options as well. But what I'm going to do is create an empty project here. So basically starting off with a blank canvas, and that's what we're going to see right now. But before that, we have our specifications for our codes here. So this is another great potential here. By the way, Daniel, I will I will answer your question towards the end. It seems like you may have a specialized specialized difficulty with the Revit model. What I would suggest, and we'll get in contact with you at the end of the webinar, is contact with our service support, and they'll be able to acquire those files from you and help you along the way easily. But I will facilitate that at the end, and I'll send you a message definitely. Okay, so our different code structures. So what we've done here at CYPE is implement codes from around the world so that our solutions can be used everywhere, basically. In terms of the large codes, the main codes that other codes are modeled off. If you're a structural engineer, you'll know that there's much similarities with the American, English, Euro codes together. Of course, there are some particular places around the world where things such as earthquake and different types of additional load cases get into consideration larger, of course, because of the terrain. But of course, you can see here all the different codes that have been implemented in our solution. So from Europe to South America to Asia, and you can see here I'm able to select the code corresponding to the particular section. So cold form steel, rolled steel, timber, etc. And I can introduce those particular codes here. I can also introduce use categories as well. And you can see here what the program expects of me before I begin the project is, of course, to lay out my my specifications for my sections, for my loads, reinforced concrete options, and foundation steels. And also we have some options for exposure classes. So you can see here, I can select the different options, a wide variety of different options. You can see as well with the earthquake, dynamic earthquake loading, I can introduce foundations, construction process specifications, additional load cases as well. I can introduce those all prior. So what this basically means is I basically set up my environment before I build, before I design. But of course, we're not restricted to doing this. We're not restricted to doing this prior. We also have the option later on to come into this particular window and define our different specifications here. And of course, different foundation soils, reinforced concrete options. So when we do use reinforced concrete for our foundations, etc. And we can finish. There are some limit states as well. Of course, I'm just going to accept. And this is basically our environment here. So a bit about the environment. Now, if you've used other programs in our repertoire before, you'll know that there is some similarities between them. We have our file tab for different options within the program, our project tab for different options as well. So we can go back to the general data options, drawing preferences, dimensioning units, management of section libraries as well. So I can actually look at importing different sections from particular codes, and you can see here Korean standards, all the different standards. I can input those particular sections from there as well. I can also export as well. So if I needed them, the ones that I used, I can export them quite easily. Of course, with our tools, we have the option to create different layers within the project, of course. So getting those, making definitions between bars, columns, etc., etc. We can also color code those as well. We'll go through that a bit later, but just a quick overview. And then obviously some different options with defining and different elements, and also introducing some symmetries as well. We can also import drawing files as well. So your DXF and DWG files that you get from your 2D your 2D solutions, we can input those, and you can model your project as such. Of course, a 3D view as well. Then we have the option for different planes as well. So you can see we can introduce references, dimensions upon loading different structures, levels, introducing grids as well. We can do that. We can group and ungroup elements. But what I'm going to do now is just introduce some levels. So I'm going to introduce one level. First. That's 3. So you can see here, I can introduce different levels as such. So what this basically means, of course, I can do it automatically as well. If I click on generate levels, I introduce the prefix, the number of levels, the initial elevation, and the separation between them. But of course, if you wanted a specific amendment, you can do that as well manually. So upon inserting that, you can see here that the program automatically through the view separates those different sections for me. Now, of course, I can maneuver around these sections as well using our tab here, using our scroller here, and also in the X and Y in the Y direction here as well. I can also do it by learning some shortcuts. So holding the Shift key and my middle scroll button, I can do both at the same time as well. Moving on, we can also introduce nodes again and define internal and external fixities, bars, shells, visible load cases. So all our different load cases that we can apply to our structure. These are all located here. Joints as well. So a great thing that we can do in this program is generate our joints. So once we've created our structure, and we're going to go through this throughout the presentation, is generate these joints. And I'm going to try to demonstrate it, and I'm sure I will. The ease of generating these joints that are all checked to that particular code, and not only just the joints. We can look at bars, we can look at foundations. I'm going to look at here. You can see the foundations tab here after we've amended our installation as well. And then we move on to the analysis. So we can, of course, analyze and then look at the different specifications and results that we get as well. We can also, we're going to look at a bit later on, is our ultimate limit state checks. And this is really important, because what the program will do is it will compare the selected section that you have to all the other sections in the family, and show you the percentage approval or the percentage pass of that particular section against your codes, which is quite interesting as well. So you can look at, you can sort of gather that finding the best minimum model is quite interesting here. Of course, we have some windows as well and some help sections. Now, this particular column here, this particular row basically just condenses all our tabs at the start. Now, as well, you can see the report and drawing generations are all on the right, top right-hand side. You can see as well, we can export to Tekla and CIS2 formats as well. So if you're looking at enabling your workflow, we can, of course, accommodate that as well. Not only do we export, we can also import from those applications as well. Of course, we have the different specifications, so units, drawing options as well. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce a node. Let's introduce a node here. Let's move over at about 3 meters. Now you can see I can introduce my coordinate introduction. Let's go to 7. So of course you can see that upon inserting each node, I get these reference lines. That makes it very easy for me to continue on with my installation here. So let's continue on. So I've created those 3 nodes here. What I can do as well, of course, with the capabilities is copy my elements. So I can, again, come over here, select the nodes that I want to copy, select the ones that I do, right click, select my given starting point, and I can move over or move particular directions to copy that node. So what I can do here is I can go, no. So I can just move over, let's say about there. Let's say 2.5 meters spacing. And you can see here, the program will insert that for me. And here you can see I'm building a sort of family of nodes. Okay. Sakomi says he doesn't hear the voice. Can you guys please confirm that you guys can hear me? Sakomi, just make sure that your speakers are not muted because I'm pretty sure that everyone can hear me. I had some respondees at the start say the audio was perfect. Okay, so people can hear. Sakomi, can you please check your audio settings, please? Now, of course, we can go to. Okay, perfect. So here you can see that I've created a family of nodes here. Let's create some bars. You can see here I can select from a wide range of bars here. So my generic bars, my ties, columns, and beams. And you can see as well the different families of generic structures, also columns as well from all those particular codes, and I can select those. So another great thing to mention, and we'll look at an example that's actually done it, is we can of course design our own aluminium structures here and design our own concrete as well. So in terms of the level of freedom we have in designing particular sections and different sort of joints, etc., it's quite vast. Okay, so I'm going to select this type of bar with simple sections. You can see obviously all these different layouts as well that we're able to introduce. But for this particular webinar, I'm not going to do anything too complicated because of strictly just time. Again, we can of course introduce fire resistance for our members. So let's connect my nodes here. You can see that it's literally that easy. I'm literally left clicking and right clicking. Ahmed's asked how to access previous webinars. I will send them to you after, Ahmed. So you can see how easy it is for me to just maneuver around the software. Of course, we can find our connecting beams as well. And here as well. Okay, perfect. So that's a very, very simple portal frame that I've just designed. We can also consult the 3D view. You can see here. Now the 3D view, I have different options. So again, I can introduce a ground level, the materials introduced, some different viewing options, projecting the model differently. This is, of course, a very simple example that I've just done in 2 minutes. Projection types, rotating about certain axis automatically. And also we can, a nice nifty feature is when you've got larger projects, is introduce cuts in the axis. So you can see here, I can do that as well. I can also obtain different information about certain elements. You can see here by clicking the eye model, I get a condensed properties explanation. So the reference, layout, material, etc. Now, what we can do as well is I can head to my, what I need to do is, of course, introduce some fixities in my notes. So here I can move to external fixities here, play around with my view, and introduce a fixed connection to these elements. And you can see here now, the program will recognize that I have fixed connections on the ground. I can move to foundations, and those, and of course, those beams have been inserted here. I can, of course, with the Foundations tab, again, amend my general options for the foundations. So things, so this is a snapshot taken from the original general data. Introduce some reinforcement tables as well once I've introduced my reinforcement. So I can come over here. I can also automatically generate footings and beams. So I can come over here, generate, do you wish tie beams to be generated? Yes. And you can see here the program will generate some tie beams. Now, of course, these aren't to standard. I'd have to come over here and again, I can check. So I can check the foundation, sorry, by clicking that. You can see here the program will check the foundations against the particular standards that I've used, and you can see here I have errors everywhere. I can go into particular sections. You can see here some of the checks have not been verified, and I can produce complete reports as to why that check was not verified. And you can see here minimum shear value. A quick, easy solution is basically to let the program design it for you. So click design here, and you can see here now I have the option to design foundation elements, tie beams, etc., and also strap beams if I have them. And here I can give the program some specifications. So a quick and complete design, a quick design with minimum dimensions, and also a iterative design. So I'm going to click minimum dimensions, and you can see here now all my checks have been verified. I can go into that particular section and again confirm that all my checks have been verified. Now this particular report again can be exported into all our different formats, shared with our project stakeholders, of course, printed, etc., etc. And that's for one particular section. Now, what I wanted to do again was go back into the structure, and you can see now that I've amended it. So we can go, I can go into foundation, sorry, and I wanted to show the overall structure. And you can see I can turn off my ground and I can view my my foundations along with my steel installation. Okay, so again, what I would do now is either introduce some shells. I can introduce some shells to my structure, look at generating some loads, and also generate some joints. So here you can see, I think Ahmed just asked, will I do the connection design yet? So I'm doing that right now. So I can generate some connections. You can see the program asked me if I want to group the similar connections. Of course, I can just click yes, and you can see here 17 connections have been generated. So in terms of connection design, let's go to edit and view a particular section. You can see here that my section is here. I also have the different incidents that have occurred at this section. So you can see here, no stiffness have been found and the joint is not defined. I can of course design the section as well, and that will remove all the errors because it'll intelligently design it. But what I'm going to do now is analyze the job. Now here we have some different options for analyzing. So we can do a quick section design. We can not design the section. We can also check for bars and check the finite dimension of the nodes. In terms of connections, Ahmed, and for everyone else watching, of course, we have the option to resolve all nodes with welded connections and with bolted connections and with previously defined connection methods as well. So if you have particular connection methods that you've done before, you can, of course, analyze our project as well. You can see all the different modules that are associated. So let's analyze. You can see here that I have some errors here. I can go back into foundation and design. And as such, I can do some checks now. So let's have a look. By clicking on check element, I can select a particular element and view the different resistance. So this is what I was talking about prior. Let's have a look at this particular element. You can see here that upon selecting each element, I get the weight of that particular section and the resistance to my check. Now we'll have a look at a particular example where I can actually reduce my section, but this is basically the sort of capabilities we can do. You can sort of see that the library of sections imported to the code check, and you as the designer are able to find that particular section in which the analysis has been carried out, and also the analysis also does take into consideration all the other sections. So you can select a smaller section in order to reduce cost, etc., etc. As well, we can check an element. Oh no, the ULS check. So for instance, you can see my ultimate limit state check. I can go to a particular element, hover over it, and you can see all the different checks that have been done on that particular element. So here you can see a list of all the checks on one particular element as well. Again, all these reports can be shared, exported, and printed as well. I can view the complete listing, and here you get a complete report on all the checks that have been done on that particular section, along with whether the check passed or not. Now, of course, you can see the joints again. You can see here the joints. I need to generate them again because I've introduced changes as such. So that's a bit about this particular example here. So you can see what I wanted to demonstrate was the overall progression of a particular job, how we would go from the fundamental start to, again, analyzing and looking at some diagrams and also foundations. What I'm going to do now is introduce a larger project that we can see. Okay, so here's a example project, another warehouse. We can consult the 3D view here. Here you can see a colleague of mine has designed this. It's also available on the examples here. So what I can do now is analyze the project, do a quick section design, or do not dimension the design as well, but it will still work. And you can see I get a final report of that check and what's happened. You can see here I don't have the fire option that's been activated. Now again, as well, I can of course generate my joints. Again, I get the option to generate, and you can see 161 connections have been generated, and as such. Now I can look at a particular complex joint as well. You can see here the program groups all similar joints. So any sort of check that I do on that joint gets mimicked for the rest of them. You can see here I can also design these particular joints. Let's design it with welded connections and configurations from the job. I can obtain a complete assessment of that joint as well. So not only do we get code checks for our beams and all our other sections, also our joints. So you can see here a list of all the reports that have been done, all the checks that have been done on that particular joint as well. So the column, the beam, and the beam, sorry. So all the different checks that have been done on the beam. I can, again, produce a complete listing. Let's go again to generate the joints again after we've analyzed. Again, you can see I can go to foundations, and my foundations are here as well. I can do the check. And you can see here, I can go into foundation element, and I can again edit my foundation element as well. So here you can see my editing window. So I have the option to choose from the different footing, the different types of footing. I can amend the different materials that exist in the footing. So my concrete and steel, you can see that these are the materials that I previously defined. I can also amend the different soil bearing pressures as well. So if I have, if we have different sections, I can introduce different sections in my ground. I can introduce those situations. I can look at the geometry, the reinforcement, our options here. So the increase in different directions, code checks, and I can again design that particular section as well. Again, with our code checks, you can see the complete report of the check. So doesn't show the connection detail when we want to show it. Okay, well this is the connection detail that we've defined here. I can see that I can design the particular connection detail. I can view the code checks for that detail. I can again find a complete assessment of the node and also look at the detailing. So this is what Monique Lang asked. If I head over here, you can see the detailing of my joint. Now, of course, that can all be printed. Again, the functionality is there. So I hope that answered your question, Monique Lang. By coming over here and clicking onto the detailing option, I can get that complete detail. Of course, I can define different webs within my beam and columns as well, and all those changes will be done throughout here. Now, another thing about, you can see the 3D view, I can again access the same functionality as I did prior. So all my different elements, I can turn on and off the sections here, and also introduce ground levels, etc., materials, and also some object lighting. Let's have a look. We had someone who wanted to do joints, edit. Let's edit a particular joint here. We can design. You want? I think John asked if we can do one for bolted connections. You can see, of course, with the bolted connections, we're doing the exact same thing, and we can get these particular installations here. Again, with that detailing. Yes, of course. Of course, it's possible to define Sorry, Ahmed's asked, do we have the option to introduce bills of quantities of the project? Not bills of quantities. We can introduce all our material specifications, all our reports. We have a program called Archimedes that is able to produce a bills of quantities for you, and that's all woven within the workflow. So in terms of that functionality, it is there, Ahmed. What's another question we had? Is it possible to define different types of connections, end plate, for example? Yes, of course. So all our different end plates can be defined here. So all our different elements, our haunches as well. So we're looking at particular joints, all the different elements, components of that joint, and we can edit that accordingly. You can see here, I can introduce different welds, different plates here. Now, I'm not going to get too in detail with this because we don't have much time. Let's accept this change. Now, let's go to some results that we can use. Now, of course, we can find the ULS check. Oh, what I wanted to show is some other examples. So let's go into some other examples. Here is an example of an aluminium dome that's been generated. You can see here we're able to, of course, generate these complex sort of shell type structures. So this is things that you see on top of shopping center buildings that are encased with glass. This is all being designed here as such, and you can see that design there. What else? Carports. So for instance, these sort of ports that can be designed in our software. Solar panel structures. Again, you can see the complete structure. A thing I wanted to mention prior was the freedom in terms of designing customizable sections. You can see here. So let's have a look at that. Let's go to bar. Let's go to describe this particular element here. You can see here that my colleague has used a special aluminium section and he's designed it accordingly. And not only one, he's done a few. Let's go to edit. You can see here, this is our editing section where we can introduce different sections, curved elements, stiffeners, etc., and basically design a section, right? And the program will, of course, do the calculations for our main axis, etc. And we're able to use that in our project. You can see here, yes, you can see here all the different, this project has basically been customized to a large degree, actually. So the panel support, transverse sections as well. So this particular solar panel support structure has been completely customized. Again, with the foundations, we can view the structure with the foundations. Now, let's move on. We have some more examples. This is the warehouse example. So this is a warehouse example here. That we've designed. You can see the ties as well that have been installed as well. Now, let's analyze this project. Let's do not dimension section. I can go to foundations, design my foundation. Back into structure, analysis, and we can now look at some displacements. So you can see here all my different load cases that I've introduced and the different loads here. And I'm able to view the displacements there. My reactions, I'm able to go into, again, the same particular workflow, select a simple load case and view the reactions of particular supports. Again, I can change the load case and all those reactions will be updated. I can also look at foundation equilibrium combination envelopes as well. So different types of bearing pressures combinations that we can do as such. Now, let's move on. We can also look at some deformed shapes. So here you can see I can introduce maximum values for my deformed shapes. Again, I have the option to look at and select the different load cases. I can view the structure as well as the installation is done. We can also look at some, of course, some animations. We can actually increase this to 50 and view the displacements here. Again, getting that maximum value here and knowing where it is. Now, of course, this is just an option. We can, of course, consult different areas and view the displacements and forces at that particular point as well. And that's a bit about the analysis. So, of course, not only can we visualize the analysis here, we also have a wide range of options for the reports as well, and that's what we're going to be looking at now. What I wanted to show was the analysis of the bars. So let's go to check elements. You can see here, this is what I wanted to demonstrate, is that we can select particular elements, and you can see here, I'd be fine to reduce my section and still be in check with that at that resistance value. Of course, if I do those checks, we can of course see that some can't, some can, and this is the sort of functionality that we can establish here. Let's go to ULS checks. You can see here as well, I can find the ultimate limit state checks at the worst point of a section and also at the indicated point. So here at the worst point, I get a complete report on that check and also at an indicated point. So if I zoom in, I can select the different points that I'd want to, and you can see here as well, I get a use percentage. Okay, so that's a bit about the ULS checks. So let's look at some reports that we can generate. Here you can see a wide range of reports that we can find and generate as well. So let's have a look. So you can see the sort of just the sort of ease of use of the workflow. I can generate reports at a click, particular elements of particular whole projects, etc., etc. And you can see here now, I have the index. I'm able to analyze. I'm able to consult all my results in one report here. So I can go at particular geometries or bars and consult all the different checks that have been done. Again, all these checks can be shared, exported into our workflow. I can also look at our loads and result summaries as well. And of course, with all the different load combinations as well, we can generate those reports. A little bit about the drawings as well. Yes, Christopher, in terms of that question, we can do seismic analysis and time history seismic analysis here. I'm not going through it in this particular example, but we can, of course. It takes some time to do the analysis, so we don't have time to do it here. But of course, we can, of course, consult with you after the presentation where we can demonstrate that easily. Of course, our different foundations plans as well. So you can see all the different drawings. I can also customize these drawings as well, move particular sections of the drawing, export to DWG, etc., etc. You can see here all the different types of drawings that I can amend. I can also develop these drawings as well. As such. Now, of course, this is a very simplified drawing, but again, in terms of defining the different dimensions, etc., etc., we all have that capability. We have that capability there, definitely. Now, someone's asked, Rakesh has asked, applying for wind loads. Now, of course, we can go back into loads and introduce our visible load cases. You can see I've already introduced my wind loads here. But if I go to project general data, you can see with my general load cases, all my wind loads that have been introduced here as well. And not only wind loads, we have temperature, shrinkage, accidental, etc. as well. Let's have a look. What are some other questions? Concrete filled tube. Yeah, so that was the different elements that we can design. So bar, new column. Describe. You can see here, in terms of concrete filled tube, I can define a composite section here. The answer was for Paul. And of course, we have different options, all taken from the codes. I can introduce different reinforcements. And of course, this is, I also have the option to customize my section, as you saw in the previous example, with that aluminium solar panel structure that we had. And that's a little bit about CYPE 3D. Now, what I'm going to do now is to keep on taking your questions. I'm going to move on to our portal frame generator just quickly. So our portal frame generator, of course, is for an easy installation of portal frames. And this is another question of that I think one of you guys answered in terms of designing portal frames easily. This is a solution that we have that's been already that has the connection with all our structural programs, and we're going to demonstrate that in a second here. I want to just make sure that I've gone through all particular sections here. Let's move on. If you guys still have some questions, I'll be taking those as well. So we can. I'm going to move back into CYPE 3D. You guys will see. So this is our portal frame generator. Let's create a new project. Again, same sort of workflow. So you can see it doesn't. by starting a new program, it doesn't mean you have to learn it all completely again. The sort of environment, the environment is sort of homogeneous throughout the whole, throughout our whole solutions, and not only just for structural. It's for all our energy solutions, etc., etc. The different models that I showed initially. So let's create a new project. So now the question poses is, do I want to introduce a new frame? So what this basically is the program is able to guide me through a mono pitch or dual frame pitch. You can see here all the different types of frames that can be generated: a rigid frame, Howe truss, Warren truss, etc. And I'm not going to read them all, but you can see all the different types of different frames. Let's introduce this frame here. Quite a complex structure to do in CYPE 3D alone. So this is where the functionality of this program comes in. I can, of course, look at the different dimensionings. I can select all the different dimensionings here. My left and right dimensions here, and I'm going to leave them as such. And you can see here, the program defines it for me here. I can introduce different tie beams as well. So introduce purlins on roof if I have covers. The different general data that I have here as well. I can represent elevations, etc. within the project. You can see here I can introduce roof coverings, lateral coverings, wind loads as well. Once I click on wind loads, I have the option to select from different regions and different codes, different wind load codes as well. So you can see here, consult the different codes here. I think someone asked about India wind load codes. You can see we have that as well. Someone did ask about India wind load codes somewhere. Anyway, okay, so again, the different wind loads, all taken from that particular standard. Snow loads as well, quite nicely there. So let's accept the change. Now this is just a quick overview. You can see here the option to export to CYPE 3D. You can see here I can define the type of frame, so either a penned or fixed frame, the different buckling options we have. So I can of course generate buckling in sway frames. I can export a isolated frame or a 3D frame. I'm going to choose to export a 3D frame here. And I can again group different frames. So you can see I can group central and end, and I can group all, etc., etc. So let's accept here, and this is where I want to basically show the functionality here. I've defined a complicated portal frame in basically 2 minutes with wind loads, and I can export it to my CYPE 3D. And there you go. All my different nodes, all exported as such. All I need to do is introduce some bars to connect the structure in the most simplest of fashions. Now, of course, that's just for some viewing pleasures. And you can see here, my structure has been imported into the workflow. I can, again, of course, you can see the fixities of the frames. I can go into foundations again and continue on. Sorry, I have to define the fixities as well and continue on with my analysis here. So in terms of functionality, it really is all here. Now, there is these sort of wind loads that have been imported into our structure. So you can see, I can find some visible load cases. So you can see the another great feature with portal frame generator is the complexity of the wind load installation. Now, of course, you'll know that designing these sort of structures, there is complex wind loads that need to be taken into consideration, and I'm able to view all of the load cases here. So bear with the program a little bit. There's a lot of load cases. And you can see here all the different cases that have been defined here. And that's all done quite simply with our portal frame generator here. Now, of course, we can go into more detail into particular sections in CYPE 3D, of course. We get the base model, the base portal from our portal frame generator, and we can, of course, as I demonstrated, find the functionality here as well. Now, of course, if you were here, if you were in last week's webinar, you'll see that now, of course, we've generated our portal frame, used it with CYPE 3D. I can now export my CYPE 3D model into CYPE CAD and then combine it with my concrete structure. So in terms of functionality there, if we go back to our diagram here, and this is what I wanted to do, is not only do these sort of applications coincide with each other within the BIM Service Center, but also the applications in those particular sections. So all my structural applications are able to communicate together, and in the end, define just a structural model as such. So in the example that I showed, or the structural model, you can see here. So in terms of combining concrete slabs with steel portal frames, etc., the functionality is really there. We had some questions. Okay. In terms of loading steel structures, that was you can see that I can, of course, introduce different loads, Sacconic, on different sections, different panels, etc. I can also describe those as well. Let's have a look at some examples, some larger examples that have been defined in CYPE 3D. And this is only in CYPE 3D, so it hasn't, these examples that I'm showing now haven't benefited from the workflow as such. So here's a large Morocco tower project that's been defined in CYPE 3D. Moving on, the metallic hotel that we've defined. You can see here all the foundation elements as well. And also a novelty, the Eiffel Tower, that's been defined in CYPE 3D. So you can see the sort of complexities that we leave CYPE 3D to consult, these sort of metallic complex structures. Now, of course, in CYPE CAD, we can, of course, create metallic structures, but not to a very high degree. If we're looking at different shells, etc., that's where the real power of CYPE 3D comes in. And this is how this is a basic workflow of how we potentially work through different sections. Bit about, let's go back into the portal frame generator. A bit about, of course, so what I want to stress here is in terms of harnessing the potential of the workflow. We want to, of course, have the plan before, have our different sections, and utilize the workflow in a way that will minimize overall work time, but maximize design time. So maximize the time we have in designing and selecting particular sections, designing and selecting particular loads, etc., and modeling it on our environment. Yes, Ahmed has asked, is it possible to generate architectural drawings and model automatically? Yes. So once we've created our reports, we can of course model it on any sort of format, so our DWG, etc. formats for use with other programs. We can also, again, export our program into Tekla structures and CIS formats and many other formats as well. And that's a bit about the overall workflow. Now, let's have a look at the project. And I'm going to end it on a particular project we have. You can see here the different projects that have been created within our workflow as well. Of course, we can also model different holes and slabs. So you can see the swimming pool that's been defined here as well. Quite nicely. Okay, so that's it for this presentation. I know we've sort of ended, but I want to give some time for some questions that we can look at. So if I'd missed anything in the presentation, please ask your questions now. I'm going to go up because I know I've missed some questions along the way. Foundation plate. Rakesh asked foundation plate and foundation plate connection details. So here, foundation elements edit. You can see my my reinforcement and all my different sections can be joined here. Ahmed's asked, can you please share the webinars with me? Anyone who wants the webinars, we will just please let us know the this request, and we will provide those for you in due time. I will after the webinar is finished, I will look at different sections. So here, the question with the foundation plate designs. That's all done here. So you can see this is the foundation plate design. I can go into particular sections of the base plate, the stiffness, etc., and define them as such. I can, of course, we went through this, but of course we can design and achieve those code checks and reports as such. And you can see upon the design, we get this sort of we get the stiffness. Okay. Yeah, okay, Ahmed, thanks for the email. We will get in contact with you with the previous webinars. I hope that answered your question, Rakesh, about the foundation plate design. You mentioned in the beginning. So Akos asked if we could generate architectural or structural IFC models from the different coordinate views and reference views. Now, I mentioned previously, if you remember at the start of the presentation, we had the option to either create a new job completely from scratch or to import an IFC model. Now, once we import the IFC model, of course, we can schedule a demonstration for you, Akos. But once we import that IFC model, then the program will walk us through the different coordinate introduction and reference views for that particular IFC model. So we can, of course, recognize the structure and the model and bring that in and customize your installation with those particular views. I hope that answers your question. If not, we can look into it further after the webinar, definitely. Rakesh asked castellated sections modeling analysis and design. You can see here the castellated options that I have in terms of describing the particular models. Rakesh, I hope that answered your question. So of course, we have different options from designing hexagonal, octagonal, circular, and also defining the different ratios and filling openings as well inside the program here. I hope that answered your question in terms of castellated design. And you can see here, Rakesh, the castellated section that's been installed here. Ovidiu, I think, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, has asked if we have any webinars. Of course, we'll get into contact with you after and provide those webinars for concrete and steel recorded. This one is recorded as well, so I can provide this for all of you as well. So keep on sending in those questions. Paul Deno asked in terms of if we can check model 1, 2, and 3 behavior. You can see here by going into the particular beam, I'm able to check those particular modes here. So the equivalent T stub check as well. And I answered the question from Paul about the concrete filled tube as well. Okay, what else do we have? I've already answered. Daniel had asked. Daniel had asked why sometimes the nodes were not generated as it happened in the first structure. Now, of course, there are some the nodes in terms of generation needs to be they need to be I-beams for the nodes to be generated. Now, of course, we have options to automatically generate nodes at intersections as well, and you can see here. So all these different types of nodes that can be generated can be viewed on our website as well. So all these different nodes. I hope that answered your question, Daniel, in terms of actually generating these. They have to be I-beams for them to generate a particular section. Not just I-beams, but also circular and different shaped nodes. You can see in my example, I used bars and hollow sections as well. Akos asked, we can, for the creation of analytical models and share them via IFC for analysis apps. The analysis is all done in our structure. So we can import the analysis, of course, the analysis models, the analytical models, my bad. But in terms of exporting, all our analysis is done in-house. In terms of these composite columns and design, you can see, I mentioned it prior, but we've got another question, so maybe someone missed it. The different composite sections that we can design. So all the different shapes, so cold form steel shapes as well, all designed in-house here. Okay, so in terms of Ruckus's questions, in terms of gusset plate connection design, we connect them with haunches as well. Now we can show that to you at a later date, Ruckus. Or we can. In terms of gusset plate design, now of course I mentioned that we can, but in terms of our connection design, you can see here we can design these hunches that mimic the same function as a gusset plate. A similar function here, Rakesh. Guys, now we're going to end it there. I hope that I've addressed your questions as well as I can, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the webinar. Now, of course, for all those people that wanted those presentations from last week, we will get in contact with you and send those through. And don't forget that next week we also have some presentations as well that you guys can join. And if you guys are interested in that, we'll definitely provide those connections for you. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the webinar. A little bit about our structural modeler, our structural solutions here. So initially we went through CYPE 3D and found and learned about the overall environment. Then we went into portal frame generator and demonstrated the interoperability there with CYPE 3D. All right, guys, have a great day. Thank you guys for attending. See ya.